Welcome. A very, very warm welcome. It is always lovely to be back here in Plymouth. Welcome, whoever you are, however you're feeling, whatever the colours of the threads that hold the fabric of your lives together today, you have brought it here. Here it will be treasured. The blues of concerns, the greys of sadness, the dazzling reds of celebrations, the glowing yellows of joys, the lilac shades of contentment, the deeper purples of feeling heavy-hearted. All are so very welcome in all their rich diversity. With words adapted from the Reverend Andrew Usher, I will light, as is our custom, the chalice of our free religious faith. Not quite as elaborate as the Olympic flame, but certainly as important. Our chalice light now takes the flame, its soft flickering glow, reminding us of our powerful, steadfast, yet evolving, renewing, and always radically free, radically loving, radically inclusive faith. May the words we hear and say today be a weaving of that love into the fabric of all our lives. We bring our hopes and anticipations. We bring our joy, our celebrations. We bring our sorrows and lamentations. And we bring our faith and adorations. All is brought to this hour of worship. All that makes our lives real and meaningful. And here, may it be blessed in this sacred place where we share in the lives of so many others, present and past. We're just going to have a short opening prayer adapted from words by Vince Gully, former GA president, inspired by the Druids' blessing. And as we're coming into this place that is sacred and loving, let's just still ourselves, our bodies and our minds, just noticing our breath as we breathe in the air that has been recycled by nature outside these windows. As we exhale it again, to be taken up again and recycled. May we be blessed with honesty, and in our honesty with ourselves, wisdom, and in wisdom, knowledge, and in knowledge of ourselves, forgiveness and joy and humility, and in humility, acceptance, and in acceptance of ourselves, our limitations and our strengths, our vulnerability and our invincibility, and our trust in God. May we trust in all that we call God. May we be truly present to all our experiences and emotions, in love and harmony with all creatures, with all creation, interwoven into the colourful tapestry of life on our planet and within the cosmic patchwork. The theme of our service today is the continuation of the tapestries and patchworks of our lives. So we're going to sing our first hymn, 197 in the Purple Book, and the words on the screen, we walk the holy ground of earth. welcome Edgar, who is going to read our first reading.
So, it is working, I think. This is a reading adapted from Reverend Andrew Hill. Patchwork people, patchwork life, patchwork God. Perhaps worship is made up of a patchwork quilt of people of different shapes, different characters, different prejudices, different colors, different ages, different moods, all arranged, sometimes higgledy-piggledy, sometimes in organized groups, sometimes half higgledy and half arranged, sometimes random. Maybe worship is a patchwork quilt of patchwork people, joined sometimes by one sewer, sometimes a few, and sometimes worship might be like a quilting bee. Could worship be a patchwork quilt, with the stitches being all our senses that are sung, spoken, silent, seen, smelt, savoured, and stroked? Possibly worship is a patchwork quilt with quilting lines stitched and arranged according to common themes of sorrow and joy, or delight and dedication, remorse and renewal. Sometimes it seems that quilting patterns in worship just happen, just emerge unplanned, when maybe some whispers from the first hymn finds its unseen echo in the last. Perhaps worship might become a patchwork quilt to creep under from the cold of solitariness, fear and incompletion, where the quilt offers warmth of companionship, wholeness and renewal, and then we're invited to leave the quilt's warm coziness for the openness, opportunity and challenge of the wider world in which we live. Imagine then that worship is a patchwork quilt, a whole in which the many become one while keeping their individual identities, a patchwork quilt in the vast interdependent patchwork of creation.
Thank you, Edgar. Without the warp and weft of life, the threads of colour woven on the loom of our planet, there would be no patchwork of creation. And so we sing, and I'll look at the screen and get the number right this time. I think it could be Weaver God Creator, which, if I remember correctly, has only a piano accompaniment. No, not this one. Later on. So we're going to sing Weaver God Creator, 199 in the Purple Book and on the screen.
Weaver God Creator, sets life on the loom, draws out threads of colour from primordial gloom. Wise is the designing in the weaving deft, love and justice
And our second reading is going to be read by Anne. The Story of the Patchwork Quilt by Julia Gibson.
I remember the first time I saw the quilt. I was 6 years old, on a visit to grandmother's place, just me. She kept it there in an old cedar chest with sweet-smelling sachets of lavender. "Let me show you something special," she said. Grandmother took the quilt out of the chest and unfolded it and spread it out carefully across the bed. "This isn't just any old blanket, you know. It's a scrapbook of our family." As if she were reading a book, her fingers traced the stitches, and she told me the story of the quilt. Great-grandmother Elizabeth started this quilt in a wagon train crossing the plains. The red patch in the corner came from her dress. Next to it, the brown homespun is a piece of great-grandfather's vest. They wore them for their Sunday best. When she'd finished the story, grandmother took out a scrap of calico cloth, cut a small patch with her tiny silver scissors, and began to stitch it to the other pieces on the quilt. As she stitched, she sang, "Back stitch, feather stitch, together we sew, a patch of gingham and a patch of calico." Each piece a memory of the life that we've built, all put together in a patchwork quilt. Once a year, I'd visit grandmother, and it became our ritual to take the quilt out, recite the story, and add a piece. When her fingers stiffened from arthritis and her vision began to dim, she taught me to cut the pieces and sew the fancy stitches. We always sang the song, "Back stitch, feather stitch, together we sew, a patch of gingham and a piece of calico." I think I'll always remember that now. Each piece a memory of the life that we've built, all put together in a patchwork quilt. When I went to college, I was closer to grandmother's place, so visited more often, and would take the quilt out, recite the story, and add another piece. If grandmother was tired, I would finish, but I would sing softly, "Back stitch, feather stitch, together we sew, a patch of gingham and a piece of calico." So I didn't want to wake her up. Each piece a memory of the life that we've built, all put together in a patchwork quilt. Later, I moved far away, and it was 2 years before I could visit. I was shocked to see her in bed, wearing a pink flowered bed jacket, and she squeezed my hand with her thin, frail fingers, leaned back on her pillow and closed her eyes. Then, "Get the quilt," she whispered. I took the quilt out of the cedar chest, unfolded it and spread it across the bed, tucking it in under grandmother's gnarled hands. This isn't just any old quilt, you know. It's a scrapbook of our family. Great-grandmother Elizabeth started this quilt in a wagon train crossing the plains. That red patch came from her dress. Next to it, the brown homespun was great-grandfather's vest. They wore them for their Sunday best. That green square came from great-uncle Jake's bandana, worn when he drove cattle all the way from Texas to Montana. Aunt Sally stitched a star to cover a bullet hole. Here in this corner, the blue and the grey were uniforms worn by brothers as they fought in the Great War, one for the North and one for the South. She stroked a soft lavender square, seemingly lost in memory. This was my flapper dress. Oh, I was the bee's knees. How we laughed. Grandmother was gasping for breath, but I knew she had to finish. That navy blue was from your grandfather's merchant marine uniform. Oh, he was so handsome. Here's a piece of your father's Air Force uniform, and here's one from your mother's wedding dress. There was a piece of my brother's Cub Scout uniform, and a patch cut from my tie-dyed hippie skirt. Get the scissors, Grandmother said. There's one more piece that I've planned. With her tiny silver scissors, she snipped a small square from the edge of her bed jacket, laid her head back on the pillow, closed her eyes while I stitched and sang. Back stitch, feather stitch, and so on. 2 weeks later, Grandmother died peacefully in her sleep. At her funeral, friends and relatives laughed and cried and told stories about Grandmother, each of us remembering her in a different way. When I returned home and unpacked my car, I found a package in the back seat and a note. Grandmother wanted you to have this. She said you know why. Of course, it was the patchwork quilt, and I could hear the echoes of her voice. This isn't just any old blanket, you know. Now I keep the quilt in an old cedar chest with sweet-smelling sachets of lavender, and I treasure it for the memories it brings of my visits to Grandmother's place. And I add new patches of memories. Back stitch, feather stitch, together we sew, a piece of gingham and a piece of calico, and each piece a memory of the life that we've built, all put together in a patchwork quilt.
Thank you so much, Anne. It's good to see everything so clearly and almost feel the fabric and the movement of the hand stitching. It's a lovely story, that one. We're coming to do a little activity. Is it in a minute? Yes? I'm in the right place. I'm just checking. So people on Zoom, you'll see the beginning of this activity. Sadly, and I apologise ever so much, you won't be able to join in, but you can certainly be joining in your imaginations at home and meditate with us, because there'll be some music in a moment. So I'll explain the little activity and then we'll start it. So I'll explain it from up here, because most of you can see something down here and a strange tower of books. The Tower of Books is going to just support a board with some squares on it. Underneath the board with the squares, there are some squares of material, and we're going to form our own small patchwork quilt. So those who would like to, when I come down and sort of set it up, I'm aware that if I don't have the microphone, I think people on Zoom can't hear me. Yeah. So it's a sort of meditation and a prayer. So when you come up and choose your piece of your square, your piece of fabric, maybe you'd like to have something in mind that you're thinking about at the moment. And as you choose your piece of fabric, and your thoughts, your prayer, your intention can sort of pass into that square, and then I can pop it on the board and we'll form our own beautiful picture. I'm just haven't counted how many people we have with us today, so quickly. 20. Fabulous. That means there's at least a square for each person. And I don't know whether Sheila, will you be able to come up or not? We could do one for you and for Stephen. Right, that's fine. Okay, so I'll go down and just sort of set things up a little bit, and then we can start, and you can come up and choose a piece of material and I'll pop it on the board for you. And if anybody would like somebody else to do that for them, please feel free to ask a neighbour or somebody behind you to do that. Here's some of the squares. And I'm going to pop this piece on to start. This is the same material as my primary school uniform was. It's not mine, but it's my great niece's. So I'm starting with the first square because this is the colour of my primary school uniform. My dress hasn't lasted this long, but this is from my great niece's uniform, and I made her little doll one of these dresses so that she felt she had some link with the school before she started. So I'm going to pop this one on, and my prayer and my thoughts, my intentions are in it. So we're going to ask one or two of you to come up before we play some music so that people on Zoom can see a little bit of what's going on. So if somebody brave would like to come forward. Edgar, thank you. Bless Edgar. You can put it on if you want.
Shall I say something?
You can say something, yes.
I have chosen this not just because it is green and blue, my favorite colors, but also because just it came to my mind straight away how important it is to keep the seas very clean and without pollution, the forests, the air that we breathe and everything. These are actually the colors of our globe and our planet, and it would be so nice to keep it as we received it and pass it on to the next generation cleaner than we received it, not the other way around.
And so we'll continue. We'll have some music in a moment. Please feel free to speak. Just come up here to do it, so then it can be, oh, yes, it can be heard. Not on Zoom, though, when the music's playing. No. Technology and me are... Yes. So please feel free to speak, and please feel free just to take your square. Either is absolutely fine. We'll just have the music then. The first piece of fabric is for this church because it's just been so wonderful for Mike and I to have found Unitarianism through it and to have you as friends. My second piece of fabric is for Unitarianism because I think it's a very wonderful faith. I'm going to fill the others up so that it is complete. Those two are for Thelma and Clifford, past members of our congregation, and I'm going to put one up in a moment for Ralph. I'm probably going to miss people that have died, but those are the three that come to me in particular at the moment. Now I've got one for Maddie, who used to come and read here sometimes. and her dad, the doctor, and their dog, who came every week. And my final square is for peace. I can't thank you all enough for the way you turned what seemed a very simple activity, which was very complex to actually measure out and get it arranged, but was so beautiful, so moving. Just a quick word about some of the music that we were listening to. It's called Tapestry, and it's by Clarice Assad. And it's a collection of musical melodic fragments from very creative female-identifying composers worldwide. And then Clarice wove each together into a vivid collage of composition. It was played by piano, violins, viola, and cello, a beautiful collaborative creation called Tapestry. And so we're going to sing 219. You are the song of my heart in the morning. Is this the one that hasn't got any voices? Okay. Now we come to a short address, time of reflection from me, the threads of life. I have always loved sewing. Even many decades ago, those cross-stitch, straight stitch, running stitch, chain stitch designs in those odd pieces of material which were crisscross with little holes in them where the rather thick needle pulled the thread. By the way, only the girls did this because the boys were off making models of balsa wood and glue. Interestingly, we never swapped activities. Those were not the days of gender inclusivity. My first memories of sewing at home are very special and warm. My mother was often troubled by a very serious and severe mental illness. Sometimes it would involve her being away for months in the psychiatric hospital, but she found solace in sewing. She was a very good seamstress and had taken evening classes. She used to make matching dresses for my little sister Tammy and me. So when I was about 4, I can remember her kneeling on the very cold tiles in our vicarage kitchen in Falmouth. The floor had been cleaned especially so as not to dirty this fresh-smelling, pretty material that she laid out. Pins between her teeth. She never did. Don't annoy me at the moment. And she was laying and pinning that thin paper pattern onto it, and then the crunch of the special sewing scissors that no one else could touch, just for material. Sometimes she'd even smock the bodices of our dresses, and in later years she'd even make her own patterns from my Pictures in My Jackie magazine. So we were all the trend. We'd have A-line mini dresses with zips up the front and sometimes wide pointy sleeves, bell-bottomed trousers or wide Oxford bags with matching long waistcoats. Mum taught me to sew by hand and then using the old Singer sewing machine and then the electric one. Often this teaching took place during weekends when she was allowed to come home on leave from the psychiatric hospital. These were precious weekends when she was stable and safe, and I'd make clothes for our collection of Cindy dolls and later on, even my own dresses. Sewing gives me a really satisfied feeling, as long as the tension on my machine hasn't gone wrong or the thread doesn't keep breaking. And it also gives me a kind of warm glow that I hadn't thought about until preparing this service, which actually came together because of all the hymns about tapestry and weaving in our purple book. The hymns inspired it long before the vision or the topic came. My sister Tammy and I weren't really able to feel that Mum loved us. Her illness could make her violent and unsafe, or withdrawn and deeply depressed, or simply not there. And then away for months at a time. But how I remember those dresses. She made the school uniform ones with pretty white collars. We had pink gingham ones, had pale blue ones with rosebuds, not unlike the flowery one on the board. We had soft needle cord ones with pockets. I am now certain that every moment of measuring and cutting and stitching and hemming was her way of saying, unconsciously probably, but I don't really feel sure enough of who I am to show you my love in hugs or cuddles. But the hours that my hands have spent preparing this fabric, these pretty dresses, are as if I've gently stroked and held you both. The metaphors of stitching, of patchwork, of weaving, of the interconnected threads of life is a moving and valuably integrated one. We all gather the coloured threads of our lives from babyhood childhood, teens, our young, our middling, our older adult years. They weave in and out, weft and warp into a fabric of threads, or a tapestry of tiny stitches, or a patchwork quilt. I'd thought that maybe each of these was individual and started with each new birth, and then was completed at death. But that no longer rings true. I wonder if we add to, extend, refresh what our ancestors wove and stitched before us. I suppose, in a way, the biblical story of Adam and Eve and other ancient creation myths were an attempt to suggest how the first stitches were formed. But of course, the beginning goes back many, many more years than those stories. And then future generations carry on and continue the images, the stitching, so on and so on, just like the story of grandmother's patchwork quilt. And not forgetting that humankind has never existed in isolation from every cell of the interconnected web of existence. Long ago, extinct species, tragically those more recently lost. Our tapestries began long before we evolved as Homo sapiens, and they will continue to be added to whatever the future of humankind might be, whatever the future of our planet with its life-sustaining attributes, scarred by humankind. Who holds the needle? Who chooses the threads? Who designs the new sections? Who chooses how to build on, how to add to the woven images bequeathed to us? While we're alive, we choose. Each and every one of us can choose what we say. We can choose how we feel, how we respond. And whenever each of us lives and loves consciously, when we totally love and accept ourselves and our neighbours as ourselves, when we make choices in line with our radically accepting, inclusive, radically transforming Unitarian faith, and when we forgive ourselves and others, then we carry on living and loving, conscious of the role we play for the seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, years, decades, maybe even 1 century of our lives when we're weaving our stories. No stitch is irrelevant. No stitch is ever unnecessary. Every stitch counts. There's a short time of prayer now. Again, using some words by the Reverend Andrew Hill. Let us gather together in our minds the many colour threads of life and weave from them a rich tapestry, the unspectacularly coloured threads of common everyday life, speckled with small sparkling silks of wonderful human moments. The darker, rougher threads of human pain, grief, trauma from war, oppression, cruelty, all interwoven with the softer, warmer colours of human compassion and diversity, all cultures and faiths, all our shades of neurodiversity, our differing abilities, our spectrums of gender, our varieties of creativity, our destructiveness, our gratitude, our evil doing, our forgiveness, all stitched in together, with the golden shining threads of vision and example set by prophets of hope and faith, which shine despite cold political darkness and autocratic power. The twisted yet shimmering threads of broken promises mended, imprisoned slaves freed, captive hostages and peoples liberated, exiled friends returned. Source of all being, God of our understanding, present within, without, around, above, below, visibly and yet invisibly woven throughout the complex, glorious web of existence. May we remember that every colour, every texture, every length and every width are all equally needed to reflect the true glory of the woven whole. We're going to sing our final hymn. This must be the one that only has the piano accompaniment, so I'm under strict orders to inform you, not request, to inform you that you will sing loudly, because there are no voices on the backing. 183, we are daughters of the stars, we are sons of the earth, spinners and weavers. It's just as well we know that life is a bit higgledy-piggledy and it stops and starts, goes a bit fast and goes a bit slow. Sometimes we even overtake ourselves and sometimes we're lagging behind. We're just going to come to the very closing words, but at the end of the service we're going to hear a very beautiful song. It's called The Patchwork Quilt by Sweet Honey in the Rock, and was written in the 90s to remember those who had died from AIDS. The words speak so clearly of the tragedy of all premature deaths from war, slavery, disease or starvation. They unfolded your lives one by one. They laid out your patchwork under the sun, and people gathered from miles around to witness your quilt spread on the ground. Then they called out your name. Oh, yes, they called out your names. And you'll live forever and know that I'll be loving you just like a patchwork quilt. So as we leave this sacred space and go our separate ways, may we never forget that we and the whole interconnected web of creation, our ancestors and species that are no more, future generations in the evolutionary process yet to come, that all these are united and preserved and treasured by their threads woven in the tapestry of this cosmos. May we be kind, be brave. May we be just, be merciful. May we be hopeful. And above all, may we be human. May it be. Time for our notices. No, music. Determined.